Hey guys, welcome to the Spiritually Fit Podcast. My name is Connor. I'm your host. I'm here with Drew Hester, our producer and in charge of operations in North America. And we also have Joe Decrion, pastor of our North America campus. He does not get the Aloha campus. We have been over this many times. It goes to Spencer. Sudan goes to Corbin.
Northern Nigeria to Adam.
Sorry, guys. You guys are interns.
And Corbin, it's not the Sudan. You get South Sudan. So
Oh, even worse, buddy.
yeah, make sure you have everything prepped and ready to go for Kylie before you leave.
But you'll have a really, really great
so
resume by the end of it. Anyway, we ended, going off of the interns and everything, we ended our last podcast talking about elders, and we were talking about some of the situations that they can be put in. If you guys didn't listen to the last podcast, highly encourage you because you probably won't understand as much about what we're talking about.
We're talking about the church.
But we were talking about elders and like how to keep them accountable, right? We were recently talking about pastors and how to keep them accountable as well. Now, going down to deacons, right? Is there a little bit more leniency than elders as far as like how often they're meeting and how often or anything that they say or do?
I don't think there's more leniency. It's not like, well, Andrew Glover, who's an elder, he's on the leadership team. He got 3 DUIs, but, you know, Josh Raines only got 1 this month. So
Josh Raines is better.
Yeah, it's not that big of a deal for Josh. He only got 1. Like, you know, his 1 to Glover's 3.
Only 1 for Josh? Good. Yeah.
We are.
I thought it'd be more.
We are completely kidding.
Sanctification.
Yeah, totally kidding, Josh. So you don't think that there's... Okay, let me ask you as far as like the attendance rule, right? Because like whenever we do things for like the worship team, I know that Drew, you talk about this. Peter goes into this about like, you know, if you're going to be on the worship team, you are expected to show up. You're not expected to like leave us high and dry, right? Is there a certain amount of, you know, unattendance that could make you no longer in that position as a deacon?
Participation?
Yeah, that's a better word than unattendance.
Yeah. I use the word participation usually. It sounds less legalistic. Mm-hmm. I mean, the idea is like if you're a member of the church, like probably like the church and you want to hang out with people. So I think in the bylaws, and this is for any person, if you are AWOL for like 2 months, I believe the bylaws says, you could be removed from a member. If you're AWOL for 2 months, unless there's like a legit reason, you could like be removed.
So what is it? Is it any different though for like someone that's in like some sort of leadership, like whether you be a deacon or an elder? Like, so let's say that Spencer,
Sure.
you know, blows you off for 2 weeks.
Yes. Like, remember, elders and deacons, they're still members. So they still fall under the same expectations. But yeah, it would be a problem if I don't see Spencer for 2 weeks, I can't get a hold of him and he's gone AWOL. Because I need him and I count on him. And the same if like Jess Glover wasn't there for 2 weeks. I'm like, Jess, what's going on? Because she's got girls in her prayer pod who count on her. Yeah. Like they count on her, they depend on her, they need her. And so that it certainly is going to be more felt and people are going to be more impacted than if it's someone else, without a doubt.
Yeah, because the reason I ask this is, you know, there are times where it seems like there's going to be probably times while I'm in medical school where I won't be able to be a prayer pod leader, or I'll have to co-lead, right? That's just like the nature of the beast. And like, I know that all 3 of us have talked about that in the past. Like, would you say that like maybe there's just seasons of people's life where they just need to step down?
Yeah, I think there certainly is. And that's why what I do is I check in with all the leaders in the summer and I'm like, hey, here's what I'm thinking for a small group. And number 1, do you still want to continue being a prayer pod leader? Most of the people like I usually kind of know. And then sometimes I'll ask some people who aren't prayer pod leaders, hey, what do you think about being a prayer pod leader? Do you have the time? Do you have the resources? Do you have the energy? Do you have the commitment? And they're like, you know what? Like, I don't know, maybe. And so sometimes I just stick them in like with another prayer pod leader because I know that they can maybe be more like a backup, if that person can't be there. And like, so I check in with everybody. I don't like to be presumptuous, but I check in with people and I tell them to check in with me if, you have a life situation that's happened that maybe I'm unfamiliar with or I'm unaware of. Like, let me know, communicate that with me. I think that's really, really important, whether you're working for an employer or you're serving and volunteering in a local church. It's really important that you're communicative because sometimes you need to be able to say, you know what, like I'm in this leadership position, but because of the season of life I'm in, can you move me into more of like a co-leadership role because I just can't commit? And that's okay. That's okay.
Do you think though, because I could see it being really tough if I was like an elder, right? If I was like right now I'm kind of considered a deacon because I'm a prayer pod leader, right? If I was an elder, I feel like there'd be like a level of like obligation of like, no, I can't let them down. I don't want to like secede from that position. Do you think there's some of that in some churches where like people don't step down for that season of time?
Sometimes, some churches, what they'll do is for a leadership team, the elder team, they'll actually have rotating positions. So my good buddy Josh Tancordo in the Steel City, he shares that one of the things they do is every 2 years they cycle out elders. So it's like, all right, Drew, he served a 2-year term, and we had identified 2 other guys already. And so we'd reach out to them, and so we're going to give them opportunities, right? Because if you're a church I mentioned I think in the prior podcast, like Piper before his last year at his church, there was like 33 elders, right? You get to the point where it's like, all right, like we only have X number of people, and we have as many elders as we do people. Like that's probably excessive.
Yeah.
And too many cooks in the kitchen. So what you do is, especially if you have qualified people, you don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen. You do maybe a 2-year rotation, or you do a 1-year rotation. And that way it gives people permission at the very least to say, you know what, your 1 year of obligational service is over. Would you like to continue? Would you like to re-up, re-enlist, or would you like to take the year off and let someone else jump in?
What do you say to the person though that is like stubborn and is like, no, I'm good, but that they can't be? Because like that, I feel like
hard. Yeah,
I feel like that's a really tough position to be in, because I can see it from like the teammate. We all 3 have played team sports. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to let my team down.
Yeah.
Like what do you do? Because you could also hurt them.
Yeah. Some people may be in seasons of life where they have a lot going on, but they can power through it. It might not be the healthiest thing, but at the end of the day, like you can't be someone's conscience for them. You can't be the Holy Spirit for someone. Yeah. And I promise you, if you try to be the Holy Spirit for someone, it's going to backfire on you. It really, really will. And so you can kind of give them advice, but ultimately your advice is only as good as if they're willing to receive it and listen to it.
Yeah. I think one of the last questions I have as far as the elders, I know we've we've definitely beat this drum a lot. Just because, like, honestly, it's not really, like, people don't really know the difference between deacons and elders, really. I didn't really until like
unless you go to
year.
like an old school church and they actually wear like name tags.
tag.
It says Deacon
dude, can we do that?
Connor and
I've
Elder
experienced
Drew.
that.
Can we
yeah.
do that?
I hate that.
Get Glover and Peter and you and Spencer like some name tags.
I actually can't stand that because I think it's like it comes off as just kind of like arrogant and prideful.
Like pious, very pious.
You don't even introduce yourself as Pastor Joe Decriana. People are like, "Hi, I'm Joe."
Right. So what happens is sometimes, and I've had this happen where I meet people in public and I'm like, oh, I go to this awesome church, and I like talk it up and I'm like jazzed about it and I cheerlead for it, and then they get there and I never tell them I'm the pastor, and they're like, wait, you're the pastor?
What's he doing?
That's
up there?
awesome. I love that.
So
That's funny.
because at the end of the day, like, it's not about my title. It's not about like my position. Like, I really do like love the church on most days. I do love it. And so like, yeah, I'm just like, at the end of the day, I'm a member like all the other members. And it's not my church. I actually, it kind of, I know sometimes it's semantics, but sometimes it annoys me because I'm like, it's not, I go to Joe Decrian's church. I'm like, it's not Joe Decrian's church. It's God's church.
Yeah.
And it's God's church. He's our chief shepherd. But really, for all the members who've covenanted and made a commitment, it's our church. We share that. Like, we share that ownership.
Yeah. When you're this is the last question. I
said
swear,
that.
guys. I said one of the last.
Oh,
You
true.
check
You're
the
right.
tape.
You're right.
Whenever we're choosing elders, is it based off of like a certain skill or like a fruit, right, of the Spirit? Because, like someone like Peter, he's great with music. He's like our minister of music. Is that his technical title? Minister of music. Is it kind of based off of that as well? Like, well, he's going to be in charge of this really major thing. It makes sense that he's an elder.
Could be. Doesn't necessarily have to be.
I've seen churches do it different ways, and obviously, like, you could say it's wrong or right or whatever, but I've seen where, yes, you have like those positions, they have a function, but I've also seen they're more of like in an oversight. Like they'll be assigned different ministries, especially at larger churches where there's like a worship ministry, a kids ministry, a tech team ministry. Like there's all adults, women's, men's ministries. They have all these branches, right? And they'll assign elders, like you're in charge of these 3 ministries in terms of just making sure that those things are headed in the right direction.
It's like a military structure.
Yeah.
As well. Yeah.
Sure. The saying is trustworthy. If anyone aspires to the office of overseer, okay, this is an elder, he desires a noble task. So I'm breaking down the qualifications. Therefore, an overseer must be above reproach, the husband of one wife, not that he has to have a wife, the husband of one wife, okay? He's not tomcatting around with other women. Sober-minded, self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, able to teach, not a drunkard, not violent, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money, okay? Doesn't mean like a pastor is wrong if he has a lot of money. It's a lover of money. Nuance there. He must manage his own household well with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. Someone wrote into Al Mohler last week, and he answered a question on this. He must manage his own household well with all dignity, keeping his children submissive. So 2 points. What if your children are out of control, but they're 18 and they don't live in the house?
It's a very...
Oh, that's a great question.
I have a real life example for
Piper.
this.
Yeah, because Piper's
What's
son.
your real life example?
So growing up, I went to a church where I had a really good relationship with one of the pastors who ended up having to step down because his son was imprisoned, and the elders were saying, "We're sorry, you can't." He wasn't the lead pastor, but he was a pastor, and they're like, "You can't be in leadership at our church right now because your household's out of control." His son was like at the age of 18, so like it was kind of like borderline.
And that's where I'm like, I think if your children are in your house, that's one thing. If your children are grown adults, this goes back to Old Testament. Like, will fathers be put to death for their sons or sons for their fathers?
Right.
And so I do think there's a nuance there, as well as, and here's something else that someone brought up: if managing their own household, and then he hones it on children, but they were like, someone wrote into Mohler a week ago, and they said, we've got this great pastoral candidate. He's like A++, but he had shared that his wife is maybe like, she's going to be a no-show. She may not be a Christian. And Mohler was like, you can't have that guy, right?
Yeah, because it gives the appearance of like it's okay.
I think and that's a really tough thing, right? So in other words,
Yeah.
he felt like in that situation, I'm very careful to disqualify someone for the actions of their family members. So I think we got to be real careful if we're going to do that. But he goes on to say, for if someone does not know how to manage his own household, how will he care for God's church? He
Yeah.
must not be a recent convert, or he may become puffed up with conceit and fall into condemnation of the devil. Moreover, he must be well thought of by outsiders, so that he may not fall into disgrace, into a snare of the devil. So those are the qualifications. Whether you're having a large church and you assign someone to different like managerial positions and leadership positions, you could do that. The way it worked at LCC is, really, Spencer was the only person that I would say is like actually specifically like asked to come and be a part of it. Like Peter and Andrew were just kind of there because early on I was a solo pastor and I needed help, and they were the only 2 married guys there. Not that you have to be married, but they were only the 2 like older, more mature guys, and I just needed help. And so it just kind of like, it never was like, hey, you're going to be on the team now, we're going to take a vote. It was more just like it kind of happened out of necessity. And so yeah.
Yeah, random question about that passage, and like it kind of goes a little bit off the rails, but do you believe like you should have to be married to be a pastor?
No, I do not think you should have to be married to be a pastor.
I do feel like wisdom will tell you that if you're a pastor and you have a wife who's not a believer, that's gonna bring a lot of problems and heartache. Like I just think about the example of you and Diana. Like she champions you on all the time and supports your work and ministry. Like she's doing just as much ministry as you are, like behind the scenes,
Sure.
at home, whatever it is.
Yes. and I've talked to her this before, like one of the things she does really well is she shares me.
Yeah.
So we've been here recording episode after episode after episode for like 3.5 hours now. She's sharing me right now. And she shares me all the time because she understands like the big picture. And I'm really thankful for her in doing that. But no,
Shout out Diana.
shout out Diana. But no, a husband of one wife is literally a one woman type of man.
Yeah.
So it's not the guy who's got his side piece, his honey off on the side. Like it's a guy who, if he is married, he's singularly devoted to his wife. But he could be someone who's not married. Obviously, most people believe the Apostle Paul wasn't married. Jesus wasn't married. So you don't have to be. I think it will probably be helpful, especially since most of your sheep that you're going to shepherd will be married at some point in their lives, or at least will have the desire to. I think that would probably be helpful.
How would you handle a situation, let's say in a few years when Geneva's a little older, maybe 7 or 8, and she's acting out or doing something sinful, and it's, we're a close-knit community. People know things and hear things and see things. Like, what if someone like starts accusing you of not being able to manage your household well because of like some little thing that Geneva
I'm sure that
did?
will happen.
Like, how do you handle that situation?
If not, I'll make sure it does.
Thanks, Connor.
No problem, buddy.
It's I would try to handle it as graciously as possible. If there was legitimate criticism, I would try to receive that, and I would try to filter through what's not legitimate. And I imagine that the people on the leadership team and the members of the church, because we are close-knit, who know me, can probably be able to discern whether the criticism is actually legitimate or non-legitimate. Also, knowing Diana, my guess is she's going to nip that in the bud real quick.
The only reason I ask is because, like, when you read the scripture and it says, okay, manage your household well, manage the children. I know from my own kids, like, there's moments of real beautiful, awesome gospel conversations we have. And there's also some really just nitty gritty moments where it's like, wow, you are a sinner and you're still living sinfully. And so, like, to have the expectation, like, oh, I just think of the pastor's kid, right? Like the PK,
It's
right?
always,
right?
That's such a cliche.
It's such a cliche thing, but it's like you think about that's like, oh, the pastor's kid. Oh man, like they're human beings. Like just because they're the pastor's kid doesn't mean they're gonna walk in and I think our children are very beautiful and nice, but they're not gonna walk in and be like, oh, look at that little angel. They never do any wrong because they're the pastor's kid.
Yeah, and there's kind of like a spotlight on the pastor's kid, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like all the expectations, like, oh, like I'm sure when Geneva gets older, is she going to be on the worship team? Like it's going to be like all these other questions that come.
Or you
with
have to
that.
deal with like, oh, Geneva's on the worship team because she's the pastor's kid.
Yeah, it's
like
like,
you have to. It's,
damned if you do, damned if
Yeah.
you don't. Like, how dare you not put her on the
And that's where I think it really behooves the other people at the church to remember that the pastor's kids are not superheroes. The pastor's kids are kids just like any other kids.
just like the pastor is a member at the church and is just a human being.
Oftentimes, and I remember telling people one time, I remember the girl I had this conversation with. She got really mad at me and upset with me. She doesn't go to the church anymore, but she got upset and mad at me because I had upset another girl at the church. And I told her, I said, Susie Q. I said,
no one at the church knew
I
that.
did not know that I upset this other girl. And she's like, I know. That's the problem. You should have known. And I said, how would I be able to know if she never told me? And she said, it's not her responsibility to tell you. It's your responsibility to know that. And I said, as politely as I could, I think you have unrealistic expectations of your pastor. Jesus can walk on water. I can't. And it's not fair to assume that I can.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
And now I want to go ahead and start transitioning in a theological way, obviously not the physical way, into church membership, right? So
Church membership.
yeah, so what is church membership? Is it necessary?
And when do I get my membership card?
And
Sam's Club, you walk in,
Dude.
flash your little membership
we get
card.
stickers for
Dude,
our
we get-
laptop.
Dude, you want to know one of the reasons? Do you guys have a credit card or whatever?
Not on me.
Oh, I was gonna say, oh man, I had a good story to tell, but I need a credit card.
Could ask Dave
You
Ramsey.
just pretend that you have a credit card because you're going to be speaking.
whatever. One of the reasons I introduce myself as Joe is I had this guy come and he thought he was like 60 years old, and we went to Love Feast and he says, so not a bad sermon. I wasn't going to tell you this, but and he pulls out his wallet and then has this laminated card. That
I
says
remember this.
That says he's a licensed minister, and he flips it to me as if he's dealing me into a hand of blackjack. He's like, I wasn't going to share this, but I am kind of a big deal. I'm a licensed minister. Just thought you should know that. I've known the guy all of 5 minutes, and I was like, wow, how insecure must you be to one, like deliver that information to me the way you did, and throw me your little card that says you're a licensed minister, which, by the way, I don't think that's a thing, at least not in Baptist tradition.
Right.
He laminated
I didn't
it
know
too.
that was a thing.
Like, he
Dude,
went and laminated it.
I want a laminated membership card.
Dude, same.
I'm kidding.
I didn't
One of the
know
reasons I
that.
introduced myself as Joe. I'm just
Yeah.
like, I'm just Joe. Yes, I'm the pastor at Lynchburg City Church, but that's not who I am. That's just my title. You said transitioning. You said theologically, not physically.
Yeah. So is formal membership biblical, or is it just a modern tradition?
Got it. Cool. Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah. Isn't church membership just a man-made thing, and we don't need to do it?
That's right.
So in Matthew chapter 16 at Caesarea Philippi, Jesus tells Peter, "You are Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it." So number one, the church membership, it's not a man-made thing. Jesus made and created the church. So if you have an issue with the formal church, oh yeah, I don't like formal church and stuff, I just kind of do my own thing, house church, kind of, but not really. You're taking issue with Jesus. Okay, let's just be real clear on that. And people will come and be like, you know what? I love Jesus, but I'm over the church. And I'm like, then you don't really love Jesus. You cannot love Jesus well if you tell his bride, the church, to go F off.
Right.
Yeah.
You can't. And that's what you're doing.
Yeah, that would be like me or Drew being like, yeah, Joe, I like you, but F Diana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That you should cringe if you're listening in Radio Land. You should cringe at that, because that's what happens.
Yeah.
So membership, the church, not man-made. Jesus made it. Number two, membership is not commanded in the Bible. And let me clarify before you shut me down any further. It's not commanded in the sense that there's not a Bible verse that says thou shalt be a member of the local church, but it is implied, not commanded. It is implied and understood all throughout the Bible. And the fact that church discipline exists. And when I'm teaching the church membership class twice a year, this is what I say. The greatest argument for church membership,
Matthew 18.
okay, yeah, is that church discipline exists. We didn't always do membership at LCC. We didn't. And what happened was, my good friend Josh Tancordo, who's a pastor in the Steel City, challenged me. He said, well, then how do you do Matthew 18, as you just brought up, 15 to 17? How do you do that? Which, if you don't know that passage of scripture, I'll read it to you right now. This is what it says. It says, if your brother sins against you, go tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have gained your brother. But if he does not listen, take one or two others along with you, that every charge may be established by the evidence of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And you say, which church? Because I've been kind of doing the church hopping thing for so long.
Yeah.
So is it the church I was church hopping at last week, or the church I'm church hopping at this week?
Yeah,
In
yeah.
other words, how do you do Matthew 18, 15 to 17 as you go through each escalatory point that he's making if it's not defined?
Right.
And then you have the issue in 1 Corinthians 5, which is pretty out there. It's pretty horrendous. You've got the church at Corinth. The guy's having sex with his stepmom. Paul finds about it, and Paul's like, you guys know about this? Oh, yeah, we all know. And you're okay with it? Well, I mean, what are we supposed to do? He's like, you got to be kidding me. This is even, the Corinthians are pretty pagan. They actually had a term to Corinthicize. They had their own kind of derogatory term at that time in the first century. And even for the Corinthians, they were like, yeah, we're pretty pagan. We love the strip clubs and the prostitutes and the hookers and the crack and all that. But that's pretty out there that you guys, that's kind of scandalous. Paul's like, this is ridiculous. Here's what you do. God judges those outside the church. He'll take care of them. You purge the evil person from among you. The problem is, how do you define who's among you and who's not among you? For the Corinthians, it was implied and understood. Paul didn't have to give an explanation.
Yeah.
in the same way in Matthew 18, it was implied and understood. There is no Bible verse that says thou shalt be a member of a local church, but it is biblically and implied all throughout the Bible in the fact that church discipline exists.
Okay, but let me ask you, can I be a healthy Christian but without belonging to the local church? Let's like
No.
can I-
No.
From experience, I speak. No.
Okay, why?
Great question. We're told to go and make disciples of all nations, right?
Yeah.
So how do you disciple your neighbor, your coworker, your friend when you come to a passage like Hebrews 13:17 that says, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you. Or Hebrews 13:7, remember your leaders, those who spoke the word of God. Consider the outcome of their way of life and imitate their faith. But you can't do that because you're not a part of a local church.
Yeah.
So you're discipling your neighbor, you're discipling your coworker, and you're like, okay, so we're here, we're at Hebrews 13, or we're just going to skip that chapter. Oh, we're at Matthew 18, we can't skip that chapter. We're at Hebrews 10, 24 and 25 that talks about not neglecting to meet together. Is it the habit of some? Skip that chapter because I neglect to meet together all the time. I'm not a part of a church. You cannot effectively, keywords effectively, make disciples if there is a gospel deficiency in your life when it comes to blowing off the bride of Christ, telling the bride of Christ, here's the middle finger, because that's what you're doing.
There's no such thing as a Lone Ranger Christian.
Yeah.
You can't do it.
No, and you're not built. You're not built. You're not made to do it.
It's
You're
not designed that way.
You're not made to do it. So here's what church membership does practically. It defines, going back to 1 Corinthians 5, the guy sleeping with his stepmom, remember? He says, God judges those outside the church. You need to take care of the business in your church. Purge the evil person from among you. Church membership in its most practical form, this is what it does. It seeks to define who is in and who is not in. Because if it's undefined, if you don't know who is a member versus who is a regular visitor, you cannot do church discipline. You cannot do 1 Corinthians chapter 5. You cannot do Matthew 18, 15 to 17. And for that reason, many churches, when they actually have legit church problems and issues and sin and unrepentant sin, they just ignore it. They sweep it under the rug because they don't have it defined who is a member versus who's a regular visitor.
Okay. So let's say that you sold me, right? Let's say that, okay, awesome. Like maybe I should be a member.
Okay.
But should it just be open to anyone who just professes that, Christ is king? Is that it? Is that all it takes? Or, you said, Connor, you should be a member. I'm like, okay, Joe, I want to be a member. Now what?
Different churches are going to do it different ways.
Okay.
The way we do it at Lynchburg City Church is we have a class. And the class is our way to make sure very thoroughly that you know what you're getting into. So we go over, number one, these are the expectations of a member. We want to know what the expectations are. Number two, we go over, this is what our church believes and teaches. We don't want any surprises. We want to clarify the expectations all up front, not just of a member, but of our theology and of our doctrine. And number three, we go over, what should we look for in a local church? Because as I always say, half the people that come to our membership classes never actually become members. And so I want to use that opportunity as a discipleship moment to help them. Like most people I talk to, they'll say things like, oh, are you part of a local church? No, I'm still looking. What are you looking for? I don't really know. I'll just know when I find it. And that's, the truth is that they won't because they haven't actually defined, what should I look for? And so we go over all those things. And then afterwards, if you still want to be a member, you can basically request a membership interview with me and Spencer. And then we use that one-on-one time with you for 45 minutes or an hour as kind of a get to know you. We want to get to know you and learn about you and who you are because we don't want somebody to become a member if they shouldn't be a member.
What if, though, we don't agree on everything?
That's where the wisdom and discernment of your pastors is going to be really, really critical on what those other things are that you disagree with.
Okay, let's say that, I'm a cessationist, right? Would that be something that I couldn't be a member?
At Lynchburg City Church, you could be a cessationist and be a member.
Okay. What if I believe...
And just for our listeners out there, the tens and tens of you in Radio Land, Connor said cessationist. You might not know what that means. He means that he believes kind of the John MacArthur camp that certain spiritual gifts, like usually speaking in tongues, has ceased. That's what he means.
I don't personally believe
That's
that.
okay.
That's an example.
Just wanted to find that.
Okay, let's say that I believe in post-trib or pre-trib.
That's okay. We can disagree on that. We have, when we go through the membership class, we have what I would call level 1 and level 2 doctrinal issues. The level 1 you have to agree with. The level 2,
Give an example of level 1.
the virgin birth, the substitutionary death of Christ on the cross, the physical bodily resurrection, not spiritual bodily resurrection. Like MLK, he believed that Jesus only resurrected spiritually. Like I would say those are really, 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 really essential. Like less essential things would be some of the things you just named.
Okay, it's more of just like a preference or a.
I don't think it's preference. I
Yeah,
think
preference is not a good
things that
word.
affect salvation related things that reflect that affect the atonement, the resurrection, the life, death, burial, resurrection. Anything that comes in the life, death, burial, resurrection of Christ, those are automatically level 1 as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, because I know that you have denied people from being a member at Lynchburg City Church.
Only a couple times, very rarely.
Yeah, one of them I think was LGBT related, right? Like beliefs in that.
You would not. I would tell somebody that you're wrong very lovingly, okay? Because in this, I show them in the Bible. This is what the Bible says. I would tell them like at this time you can't be a member. You're more than welcome to continue being a regular visitor.
Would you deny them communion?
Would I deny them communion for thinking that LGBT people for thinking a certain way?
If they're for sure like, yeah, trans women are women, and men can marry other men.
So I'm probably not going to deny somebody
Okay.
if it's just on the grounds of like their beliefs, because I don't know when I'm serving communion if someone's beliefs have changed from the prior conversation that I had with them, which is
very
why
honest.
I put the disclaimer, right? You have the disclaimer
and
like
God.
on the drug commercials, like may cause side effect, not for please don't take if you're pregnant or likely to be pregnant. So I do those disclaimers every Sunday when I serve communion. Communion's for Christians. If you're not a Christian, you're not welcome to take communion. It's not for you. Do not take it. And you need to follow that up with, you need to become a Christian today. Like today, you need to like repent and bow the knee to King Jesus, surrender right now. And for the rest of us, we need to remember Paul's words to the Corinthians in 1 Corinthians chapter 11. Many of the Corinthians took communion in an unworthy manner. God killed some of them. It's a serious thing when we take communion. Most churches don't present it as serious as it should be. It should be. Like, you're like, how should I feel about this? How would you feel if there were dead bodies lying around you at church? Like, okay, that would be pretty serious. Yep, that's how you should think about it. He killed some people because they took communion in an unworthy manner. So I put that out there, and then it's on you. And once again, I don't know between my conversation with that person, maybe weeks or months have gone by. I don't know how God's worked on their heart.
Yeah. That's a fair point because that follow up question of like, and I would plead with you to become a Christian.
Yeah.
Maybe in that time, like they were like, Joe's
sure.
right.
For sure.
Yeah. Maybe they felt the conviction. Okay. Let's say I passed the test.
Okay.
Now you guys are like, Connor's good to be a member.
Yes.
Right. That's already happened just for anyone watching.
At one point, you were an aspiring member.
An aspiring member. I said that one of the services.
He got up. Get this. You
man.
weren't there, but this is what happened. So he gets up. Is like, hey, I'm Spencer. I'm one of the pastors. I'm Andrew Glover. I'm the oversight officer. He gets up. He says, hey guys, I'm Connor. I'm an aspiring member. And just caught like me and everybody else off guard.
Yeah.
And then he got
Nicely
up,
done.
And then one Sunday he's like, hey guys, I'm Connor. No longer an aspiring member.
Yeah.
That was really funny.
That is funny.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm a member, right?
Yeah.
What are my responsibilities, privileges, and rights? Do I get more access to you? That's a question that was asked to Joe at one point, so that's why I asked.
More access.
24/7, baby.
24/7.
Yeah, that's why he hired a
Well, it's funny
second
that you
pastor.
asked the access one because I think I sent you a picture. I may have sent it to you, and there was a real sign. What did the sign say?
Yeah, like don't touch pastor, no flash photography, stay within.
Don't shake his hand.
Yeah.
No gifts.
One question, no gifts, no signatures.
There was a real church sign that said this.
Yeah.
So yeah, once you become a member, you do get 24/7 access. I say that
You get
with
the premium subscription.
I love that.
Depending on how much you give.
Yes,
Oh,
there
wow.
are
Now-
different levels.
now we're
Yeah.
getting into some
So
deep
we
stuff.
have silver, gold, platinum, and diamond level giving. So
And then there's also Lynchburg City After Dark. There's not.
There's not.
Very
No,
much not.
no. Pretty much Joe takes most of the time, but then if it's a awful hour, the interns and spend. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah. So here's what you get. you get people who care more about your soul than they do the status quo. The fact is, once you become a member, you could potentially be excommunicated from the church. And you say, well, why would I want to sign up for something that could result in me becoming excommunicated? And the reason is because signing up for something actually means something.
Yeah.
Ooh.
It
I like that.
actually
You're putting skin in the
means-
game. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's a beautiful thing, especially you're like, okay, so in other words, if you are driving your life into the ground in a nose spin, and you're like taking
Nosedive,
the
yeah.
nosedive right in the ground, you've got people who will love you so much that they will do whatever they can to prevent you
We've done that. We've seen
from
that.
going to hell.
Dude, I really appreciate Joe for this, and I really appreciate Spencer a lot for this. People don't know this, like Spencer does a lot behind the scenes.
Yeah, he does.
You know, I knew he did, but then I start the more I get to know Spencer, I'm like, dang, dude, he does that too. Like, there's so many people that like Joe and Spencer really invest a lot of time into to be like, man, I really don't want you to go to hell. And that's like a really, that's like what a pastor should do.
So expectations is you're going to be a participating member. I like the word participate. So you're going to participate with your time. You're going to show up on Sundays and Tuesdays unless you're out of town or sick or dead. That's what we normally say. You're going to participate.
If you're dead, you get 2 weeks. That's
Right. You're going to participate. My expectations are you're participating in your holiness and growing in your walk with the Lord. So
Yeah.
my expectation is that you're participating regularly in your daily quiet time, whatever that might look like for
Yeah.
you. The expectation is that you're praying for your leaders, that you're praying for your family. My expectation is that you're participating in your giving, that you're giving money. Why? Because the Bible says where your treasure is, there will your heart be also.
Yeah.
We're called to give sacrificially. Not to mention all the practical reasons why a local church needs like its members to give sacrificially.
Yeah. It's always a tough one for me.
It's a tough
Yeah.
one for everybody. And so
I struggle,
those are the
yeah.
expectations of the member. And I think that answered your question.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of dove into the last part that I was going to ask, about like, is there a time where a membership should be renewed or expired? Like, should we check in, to make sure that they are still like holding these beliefs, right? Say that they're not a deacon
see what you're saying.
or an elder. Let's say that they're someone that is a member, but they're not in any like leadership-ish kind of position where you can't, get a gauge on them.
And that's where the prayer pod leaders, our deacons and deaconesses, are so important. And honestly, I would love to tell you more, but why don't we save that for part 3?
Yeah, we wanted to leave you guys with a little bit of a cliffhanger. We're going to dive a lot more into that last question, and we're going to also shift a little bit into worship as well. That's where Drew, our extraordinaire producer, comes in, and I think you guys will see you next week.